everyone. What a buzz being here this morning. I'm walking around all the stalls today. Hopefully you are all equally as excited. So today we are going to be discussing how startups can access different resources, capital to grow and scale their businesses. And as a first off, I'm going to let our panelists introduce themselves. But first of all, I'm going to introduce myself. I am Crystal Downey. I'm an executive director here director from JP Morgan. I'm going to pass over to Anthony.
Thank you, Crystal. It's a pleasure to be here back in London today. It's our second year here at JP Morgan Chase and the official accessibility sponsor here. I'm based out in New York. I'm the head of entrepreneurship for JP Morgan Chase's Disability Inclusion, one of our 7 DEI teams at the firm.
Ooh, thank you. Hey, everyone. My name is Seven. I am the startup lead at Color in Tech, the nonprofit that runs BTF and all of this. And I support a lot of entrepreneurs to do things like fundraise and grow their businesses and work on leadership. So excited to be chatting to you all this morning.
Good morning, everyone. I am Jeremiah. I'm an entrepreneur and author. I wrote a book called Dreaming in the Nightmare via Murky Books. I'm the founder of Real Authentic Fans for Life, a really new, cool, exciting, sort of gamified marketing startup in which we sort of bring marketing campaigns to life in the real world. Our nickname is Pokemon Go for Brands. So we do really cool stuff around augmented reality and geolocation.
That sounds really interesting. And can you give us a bit of a background as to kind of maybe both for Seven and Jeremiah, how you ended up in your current roles? Maybe starting off with yourself, Jeremiah.
How much of the story we want to tell? I guess I'll give a quick background. So Jeremiah and I go back a long way, working together in a similar-ish space to what you're working in now, working with brands to reach young people and starting and building a business there, working with some fantastic organizations doing so, and then have since kind of both pivoted our careers into tech, basically. That's how I landed here, supporting entrepreneurs, learning about tech and being really interested in leadership in tech. And then yourself pivoting into Raffle. So do you want to give a story about how you did that?
It's working.
Uh-oh.
Everyone hear me?
Tech issues.
1 2 1 2. Oh, perfect. So me and Seven met a few years ago, and we essentially started a youth consultancy agency, going into various different brands, advising them on how to connect to Gen Z. And it was a super interesting journey. I mean, we started by cold emailing about 40 different massive companies. Out of the 40 emails, we received 0 responses and literally wanted to give up. But I remember an instrumental email we sent to the CEO of Rolls-Royce, a guy called Warren East, and he actually got back to us saying that he would love to sort of like collaborate with us. We then worked with the likes of Nike, with the Virgin Group, with the Bill Melinda Gates Foundation. And that sort of led us into the path that we're currently in. I think me, in terms of tech, it was something that I was always interested in, but I had no clue how to actually break into the industry. But I knew that I had amazing skills. I'd worked with loads of different brands. So it was really just coming up to speed and learning how the whole industry worked, how to sort of build a startup from scratch. So yeah, now we're here, I guess.
That's amazing. What an amazing journey for both of you. That's kind of quite good to kind of hear. So just for our kind of audience, can you talk about what, I mean, you've covered a little bit, each of you, but just what does entrepreneurship mean for you?
I think in terms of entrepreneurship, I see it from loads of different angles. I'm someone who loves to give examples. So I want you to think about sports. You know, you've got people who engage with sports every other day. They might go to the gym, they might be in fitness. But then you have elite athletes who, you know, train for the Olympics or they train for the World Cup. When you look at those two kinds of people, the difference is that one of them is determined to work in a specific space and put all of their time, all of their energy into making something happen. With entrepreneurship, the reason I think it's so magical is because it's an opportunity for you to be so passionate about something that you feel will change the world around you or will solve a problem. But in order to actually engage in it, you have to almost give your all. You have to almost be like an elite athlete. And that is what I feel separates a lot of people who, want to go into creating their own businesses, solving different problems. For me, entrepreneurship is life. For a long time, throughout all of the things that I've done over the years, I've always wanted to give back. And I've seen it as a way to not only solve a lot of different problems, but to also give back to the world around me.
Thank you. I love that. I think there's one small thing I'd add, which is a saying of mine, which is that an entrepreneur is just another word for a leader. So what is a leader's role in this world and in their industry and with the people that they care about and their communities? And it is to be a service to them and to make a difference in their lives and change something meaningful for them. So what does entrepreneurship mean? It means it's an opportunity to be a leader to change the world and change the lives of that community that you want to touch. And there are a lot of ways to do that, but fundamentally it's about really looking into things like what you're passionate about, things like what you can change and what you would love to change, what would you love to dedicate to changing and who for, and really committing to that and making the most of that. Putting your 100% into being that leader who is of service to the people that, you want to help.
And that's an excellent piece there. Great points, both of you. For me, entrepreneurship is personal. My father was an entrepreneur. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. I felt like that's all we knew was create a business, create revenue, multiple revenue streams, create income, source of wealth for your family. And it wasn't until I had my first business that I realized the power of entrepreneurship, where I had a car and I needed gas. Well, I had to work to purchase gas. This is back when gas prices, I guess, were as high as they are now, pretty expensive. I had to cut grass to pay for gas, to go out, do stuff with my friends, and it wasn't until I start charging customers reoccurring fees and start, incentivizing my customers to stay instead of leaving, I start turning profit. I was making thousands of dollars, a month cutting grass, and I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. What if I scaled this? And I started reading books and learning and taking things to the next level. And when I had my first startup company, tech company, raised my first $1 million, I saw the power of entrepreneurship and how it creates jobs and impacts people to an exit. And then now here at JP Morgan Chase, where I get to do entrepreneurship all over again and help out other entrepreneurs. So I think it's a powerful word. It describes ingenuity, leadership, and teamwork and collaboration. So it's a very personal word to me.
It's very powerful. I think a lot of the adjectives that you've all used, magic, I think I've kind of from Jeremiah, it was kind of really, hit home to me. So that's kind of great to hear. So I think with a lot of kind of new startups, we talk about venture capital. What is it, and how do kind of new startups kind of go about getting that? You maybe talk about some of your experiences around that.
Yeah, I can take that one first. So venture capital is a very specific type of funding for high growth, high impact businesses. Not every startup concept is venture ready. What that means is venture capital, they're looking for at least a 10x return on their investment. Not every one of their investments will be successful, but they're looking for the Ubers, the Facebooks, that 10x multiple on return on investment. And I think that from a startup's perspective, just knowing where you are in the fundraising process, maybe it's a loan, maybe it is financing from friends and family, or maybe it's actually your customer. A lot of times you might have a great product in the market where your customer actually ends up being your main financier for your success because you're building an amazing product for them. So I think venture capital is for select few startups that exist in the ecosystem. However, that being said, I don't think there's enough venture capital being deployed to minority-owned founders, diverse founders, and I think that there's an opportunity to kind of close that gap. And JP Morgan, for example, invested $80 million into Techstars to help put capital in the hands of minority entrepreneurs.
Amazing. Thank you for that. I just want to do a bit of like testing the room quickly. Hands up if you are a part of tech entrepreneurship or have a startup yourself or interested in the space or anything like that. If you're familiar with VC, a few people. Okay, cool. So kind of starting from bare bones, I guess something that's sometimes useful to outline is like, there are very different types of business. A tech startup is very different from like the kind of business that you were young that you described, right? A small or medium-sized, maybe service-based business like what we did when we were younger, right? These are all different types of business. Now, if you're a tech-backed startup, that's when you're often expected to go for equity funding, the VC, so venture capital funding that you mentioned earlier. And that is someone giving you a big check in exchange for equity, so a percentage of your business. The reason they've done that is because they want you to turn around the 10x return you just mentioned. So in other words, in 5 to 10 to 15 years, they want you to sell the business after raising multiple more rounds, giving away more and more equity for a high multiple. So they get a big return, you get a big return. That's the kind of premise of having a venture capital-backed business, but it's such a specific model that, as you very rightly mentioned, it doesn't work for a lot of businesses. I don't think we've fully got the time to go into the details today or on this stage now, but that, as you mentioned, is not right for every business. If you're interested in entrepreneurship, you really need to analyze what kind of business you are, if that's right for you, and then once you're on that journey, as Jeremiah, I know you are, so I know you can talk about this in a sec, is like, you need to really deeply analyze if you feel that's right for you, if you want to now be playing the game that is receiving VC and being answerable to venture capitalists with their kind of money and their influence on you in the business, and giving up your equity in the business as well if that's something you want. So that's just something I want to outline about how it all works. Jeremiah, tell us about your journey and your feelings around it.
So I'm going to keep it real. You know, I have a love and hate relationship with venture capital. And I think as a diverse founder, there's definitely a massive issue in terms of, let's talk about the businesses that are right for VC. You know, for the ones that are right for VC, there is a massive sort of gap in the amount of diverse founders that can actually get access to that funding. You know, when I think about myself growing up and the people around me, even to go into a tech company, normally they say at the beginning, right, before going to VCs, there's normally a friends and family round. But for me, I didn't really have a friends and family round. There wasn't really people around me that could actually invest capital. And then you look at a lot of VCs who are doing obviously incredible work, and some of them have really cool portfolio companies. And some of the times they might promote that, you know, we're interested in companies from ideation. You know, you don't need to have an MVP in order to receive funding. But I feel in the sort of times we're in, the goalposts are sort of shifting, and it's really hard to sort of get VC funding if you haven't got to a point where you've got an MVP, if you haven't got to a point where, you know, you're bringing in revenue. I think the other thing for me, so my book, right, is called Dreaming in a Nightmare, Inequality and What We Can Do About It. And when I was writing the book, right, I definitely touched on race in society and on conscious bias. But another thing I talked about was diversity within socio-economic backgrounds. And when it actually comes to VCs and when it comes to founders who are maybe diverse, who have actually been funded by VCs, there is definitely a sort of disparity in terms of different people's socio-economic background, people who have gone to Oxbridge, people who have maybe been privately educated. And when it comes to a lot of my friends who have been VC funded, who have maybe been within certain rooms, it's been a bit easier for them to get funding, maybe because they're around specific people or within certain environments. So I think the reason I'm talking like this, venture capital is a hard place to go to. It's incredibly hard. But one thing I don't want to do is to make it seem like the journey is easy. It's far from easy. And, that goes to say that when you build a tech startup that is scalable, because I come across scalable tech startups all the time, incredible ideas. But it's just that understanding that you need to work incredibly hard. If you haven't been exposed to certain people within certain rooms, if you are a diverse founder, I'm not just saying this off the top of my head, the data is there. And as someone in business, we have to look at data. So yeah, venture capital is hard, but it's not impossible. And I think for every entrepreneur out there right now that has a dream, that needs capital to scale up their business, you should never give up. For every 10 no's, you might get one yes. Sometimes you might have to pitch 100 different investors before, you receive that first check. But the main thing, the most important thing is to keep on going and to really believe in what you're doing. And like I was saying earlier, you have to put your all in. You have to treat business like you're an elite athlete and need to ask yourself, am I really putting in my all to make my dreams a reality?
I just want to add one thing to what you said about, being told no to get that yes. I had an investor tell me no 5 times, and then the 6th time told me yes. And I asked him, why not the first time? He said, well, how do I know you're serious about this? And I just, to think about that, right? They're going to hand you hundreds of thousands of dollars for you. They got to see, are you going to be able to work through the hard times? Are you going to be able to put your all in and take it to the next level? So I love what you said there. That was a great point.
Thank you. I think that's, it obviously takes a lot of grit and determination just to continue to persevere at it as well. And it's quite hard to continue to fight back from some of those kind of challenges, especially kind of the discrimination that you were talking about there, Jeremiah. So I'm going to pivot a little bit onto slightly different questions around, you are clearly all leaders in your businesses, in your field. Why is feedback important to grow your business? Feedback is important to grow your business.
Feedback is super important. I say to a lot of people, a no isn't necessarily a no. A no might be an opportunity for you to actually learn what you need to be doing right. Never take business personal. I think that's the number one thing for me. I can't say I've never taken business personal in the past. Sometimes I might get upset if, in the past, if someone said no or they don't really like my offering or they don't want to help. But at the end of the day, it's really important to seek feedback from people. I think number one, get feedback from the people around you. I think number two, if you're building a business that serves a particular customer, before building the business, you need to speak to the customer. I feel with so many founders, we have an idea in our head for a business that just immediately makes sense. Me and Seven over the years, I'm sure we've had about 20 or 30 odd ideas, and before we even think about speaking to anyone else, we've already created a landing page and we're already building a business. But it's super important to get feedback from customers. And what I'll say lastly, investors are not only there to give you money, but they're also there to give you knowledge. At the end of the day, these are people who are doing the job they're doing for a particular reason. So it's always good to get feedback, never take things personal, and always try to implement that feedback. What I'll say to add to it, just on the flip side, don't always take feedback and feel that whatever someone tells you, you have to change whatever you're working on immediately. I think another thing that happens is you might speak to one investor and they're like, yeah, you need to do this for your business, or you need to pivot in this direction. So as I'm saying, take the feedback, take it in, sort of analyze all of the information that you're receiving and use that information to create informed decisions.
Do you know what? I think it's that last part that I really want to add to. Is I think there's 2 things here for me. One is everyone's got their opinions. Everyone's got their opinions, right? And you know this because you're part of everyone. Everyone's got their opinions. So, and you get this a lot with investors, as you'll know, is you'll get one person saying, just do this and I might invest in you. The other person says, no, that's a terrible idea, do this instead. Everyone's giving you their thoughts, everyone's giving you their opinions. And customers are the same, everyone's the same. So you need to, I guess there's a skill almost of building up what to filter out, what's really, really useful, and what you think is going to really move the needle for your business. That is something that needs to resonate with you. If someone's opinion, for example, is to make a change or add a feature or do something you just don't agree with completely, sometimes we've even had, like, for personal reasons, like, well, that's not something we want to support, or it wouldn't be a good message for our customers. You need to be able to understand what feedback to take and what feedback to ignore. I think the other thing I'd say is, touching on something you mentioned briefly, is like, not all feedback is direct feedback or obvious feedback. In other words, sometimes, especially depending on who you're asking, people will give you more positive feedback than they'll actually give you. What's the best way? No, let me rephrase that completely. That made no sense. Sometimes people will be very kind to you, but it isn't actually very useful feedback. If you're really into entrepreneurship, a book you probably need to read is called The Mom Test, which I know everyone here will have heard about. But basically, if someone's just going to be nice to you and say, yeah, that's great, but they're thinking in their head, do I actually need this? Would I actually use this? That probably isn't super helpful, and you need to get to what is actually going on in their mind. Would someone actually use it? And you can consciously look for that feedback. You can go out and design conversations, feedback, focus groups, all kinds of things to help you understand that in more depth. Final thing within that is, not all feedback is feedback you've asked for. So sometimes you might be able, this is really, really specific, but like, let's say your product is getting someone to use something, and the whole time they say to you it's good, but the whole time they look or feel uncomfortable. That is feedback. My product is making someone uncomfortable, even if they're saying nice things to me. Now, that's such a specific example, but the point is, feedback isn't always in words. Feedback might be in how someone uses something. So really learning how to look for great feedback, as well as take it on in a constructive way, as you've mentioned.
Wow, hard to follow those. Two great perspectives on feedback. For myself now, in the corporate side of things at JP Morgan Chase, I think feedback has mainly been mentorship. Having mentors help me develop career, business, growth, and scale. And it's really kind of taking some of those same points, right? Listening to the mentorship and guidance, but maybe not all feedback and mentorship is, critical, or I have to make that change. And I think it's very, I had a mentor when I was also in the military too. I've had a long career. And it was a chief assigned at my first training base. He told me, he said, Reynolds, you need to find someone who knows more than you and go speak to that person on a monthly basis, get coffee, ask them questions. And I kind of have taken that throughout my career. And today I find mentors who are in areas that I may not be well versed in to help maybe educate me or also guide me and expand my horizons of what maybe I should be thinking about as I grow in this career.
Thank you. We're coming close to the end, but I want to answer kind of one last question, and it's about artificial intelligence. So it's obviously kind of everyone likes to talk about AI now. In your views, I mean, what do you think about AI and how that's going to change kind of the landscape over the next few years?
I think AI is super, super interesting. I don't think everyone has to be alarmed as of now. I think it's super important to figure out how to utilize it to sort of enhance the work that you're currently doing. One thing that I will say, I feel that with startups and the tech industry, we normally have trends. And the trends will come and go. I think AI is here to stay. But what I would say is, don't necessarily feel that you need to force your startup in a particular direction just because it's like currently trending. And one thing that I always see with a lot of startups is whenever there's a new trend, they're like, cool, we need to get the latest feature, we need to add this, we need to add that. But don't let trends sort of like hinder your vision. Again, not putting down AI. If you can implement it into your product and it makes sense, go for it. But don't feel like you need to change your entire business model or the direction you're going into because the new trend happened. We saw it with fintech, we saw it with Web3, we saw it with the metaverse. So yeah, that's super important.
A really quick thing, because we're running out of time, but I think that there's a bunch of stuff I really would want to talk about, but I think the one question I want to leave you with, if you're interested in entrepreneurship, for a long time we've asked ourselves, or entrepreneurs would get asked in the tech space, is what you're doing something that can be done on a spreadsheet? So in other words, is your competitor Microsoft Word or Microsoft Excel or Microsoft PowerPoint? If yes, then you really need to be different. You really need to differentiate. And AI is going to be similar. AI is going to be able to do so many of the things that lots of startups are ideating or already doing. And then the question becomes, so can Google just do what your whole startup is? And so you'll need to really think about how you're differentiating and how you're changing and adapting to that as a result. So it's not not a good thing or a bad thing, just something to be aware of as you're building.
Do you want me to ask that question, the last question, just about what JP Morgan's doing around entrepreneurship? Yeah, so I can just, a startup, so obviously that's one for you, Anthony.
Yeah, thank you so much. Real quick, so at JP Morgan Chase, we're focused on uplifting the community. As I mentioned earlier, we had an $80 million investment in Techstars, which is helping diverse founders in the United States and around the world. So we're really excited about that. We have different business resources at chase.com Business Knowledge Center. You can get access to how to grow your business, how to scale your business, different resources there. As well, we're doing just different community impact investments into different accelerator programs, venture capital firms. We have Project Spark, which is investing money into emerging fund managers. So if you're a first-time fund manager and you're raising a fund, JP Morgan is investing in you, black and brown women founders, for the first time to help deploy capital and actually change the game. So we're really excited to be here today and excited for the impact, and thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate it.